Stéphane Tetreault, one of our country's most celebrated instrumentalists, countless awards and honors for his performances as recitalist, chamber collaborator, soloist with some of the world's top orchestras, all by the age of 26. He's in Winnipeg to perform with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra this weekend and has joined me in the Classic 107 studio this morning. Hello there.
Hi, how are
Welcome
you?
to Winnipeg.
Thanks so much.
Oh, it's so exciting to have you here. And before we get chatting about your performance with the WSO, I want to ask you about something that I read when I was prepping for this interview. Is it true? Were you bribed to play the cello?
How did you find that online?
It was in an interview, and I need to ask you about it. Tell me more about the story.
It's a pretty funny story, actually. It was because I was at Face School in Montreal, which is a fine arts school. And at the age of 5, you start playing a bunch of instruments like xylophone and recorder, and you sing in choirs and you do visual arts. And by the time I was 7, my mother met my music teacher for parent-teacher night. And my music teacher said to my mom, she said, "Look, you're Stéphane's mom. You absolutely have to do something with that child." And so my mom was like, "Well, what did he do again?" He was a naughty boy again. And then it was really funny because she said, "Oh, he should really start playing a string instrument." And at that point, I only played xylophone and recorder, didn't play a string instrument. And so I had the choice between the violin and the cello. And I immediately chose the violin because it was much more familiar for me at the age of 7. And it was smaller. And it was really my choice. And so she took me aside at one point and said, "Look, Stéphane, I know you wanted to take the violin, but the cello is a much better instrument because you get to sit down. You get to sit down while playing. And, in any case, for the violin, you notice that all violinists have this mark on their neck and it's not comfortable, and you should really take the cello." And I didn't want to hear her arguments at all. And so she said, "Look, Stéphane, take the cello and I'll buy you a gift at the end of the year." And so that was the bribe.
Well, no way. And look where it's taken you. So, I mean, who knew a bribe could take you so far? But it's been so much more than bribery to get you where you are now. You're regularly lauded for your sensitive, skillful, mature playing. And I imagine at least a few of those attributes are owed to your time spent studying with Yuli Turovsky, the famed cellist, founder of I Musici de Montréal. When did you guys start working together?
Pretty early on, actually. We started working together when I was 9 years old, and it was all arranged by my music teacher at school because I wanted to have summer cello lessons, and so I was already pretty serious about it at that age. And she arranged an audition with Yuli Turovsky, and it was pretty funny because when he saw me walk in the door to his house, he sort of looked down and said, "Oh, he's young." So he hadn't realized that I was 9 years old. And so he really told my teacher that, quite frankly, I don't really have time to teach young students and to build their technique and to do the whole pedagogical thing. And she said, "Well, just give him a shot, let him play and you'll see what you think." And so finally he took me on for summer lessons, and thereafter we stayed together for over 10 years. And so that it was definitely one of the most meaningful collaborations of my life. I mean, he was really my cello godfather, my cello grandfather. I mean, he was everything to me.
Turovsky passed in 2013. What do you remember most fondly about that time spent together, those formative years?
The late nights, the late lessons. I mean, sometimes I would get there at 7 p.m. and we would still be in his studio at 1 a.m.
Wow.
But it doesn't mean, we weren't playing for 6 hours, but we were chatting about music, but about life. I remember, I think one of the most formative lessons that for me was when he told me, "Stéphane, you have to play each note as if it were your last." And that was very Yuli, because everything was so important for him and meaningful, and every note was important, and that was definitely one of his most treasured lessons.
Well, I mean, those are all, obviously forming you more into less about the technical and just a well-rounded musician, right? Giving you that depth that critics regularly rave about. So you were thrust into the limelight when you won first prize at the 2007 Standard Life Montreal Symphony Orchestra competition. You were 14 at the time?
I was 14, yeah.
You were 14 at the time. That is still mind-blowing to think of. Your career has only grown since. I'm curious, looking back now, more than a decade later, is there one moment or award or performance that really sticks out?
I mean, there are so many because I just love playing and collaborating with different musicians, and I think that every musician can inspire you and can really motivate you to go deeper into the music. I mean, lately the tour in Europe with Yannick Nézet-Séguin and Orchestre Métropolitain, playing in Paris and Cologne, but also in Amsterdam at the Concertgebouw, which was my dream come true. I think that's probably one of the most memorable concerts, only because it was a dream come true, and to work with Yannick is always unbelievable. So I think that was in 2017. That's definitely one of the most memorable moments of my career.
Yeah, you guys have a long partnership as well. I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but I do want to ask you one more thing. In terms of this specific moment, I'm genuinely curious. What about the moment when you first played your cello, the Countess that is here with us in the studio?
Definitely.
What was? I have to ask about the instrument. Tell us about that and about the instrument itself.
I mean, that's definitely one of the most unforgettable moments of my life, not only of my career but of my life. We were in 2011 at that point when I started looking for a cello, to find an instrument that I could play, at the bequest of Mrs. Desmarais, who passed away a few years ago. But she was the one who really encouraged me to find an instrument that we could use, and it was amazing because that cello belonged to Bernard Greenhouse for 50 some years, and it was in Boston, and I went to Boston, and at my also request, it was a blind audition, so we had about 6 cellos, and I didn't know which was which, and I think it was better that way. And then at one point I took one of the instruments and played one note, just an open string, and I was blown away. It was the most beautiful cello sound I'd ever heard, and it was the Stradivarius, the Countess, as I affectionately call her, and she's in the studio.
She's here in the studio, owned by some pretty famous individuals. You mentioned Greenhouse, but also one Niccolo Paganini had
Absolutely.
it for a bit, didn't he?
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that?
I do.
Paganini?
Every day.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. So audiences are going to hear it and you performing with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, the Lalo Cello Concerto in D minor. What can you tell us about the work?
It's a sensational work. I mean, it's a great work to collaborate with an orchestra. It's my first time with symphony orchestra. Actually, I've played the Lalo quite a few times, but with string orchestra and another arrangement, and with piano. So this is my first time with symphony orchestra, so it's very exciting. First time with the Winnipeg Symphony, first time with Andrei Feher as well, the conductor. So it's really a great work to be doing a debut with. I think it's exciting. It's deep, profound. It's so beautiful. There's a lot of Spanish influence, so you really feel the energy and you really feel something burning the whole time, and it's a great work, and I'm really looking forward to playing it.
Well, you mentioned, talk about a great way to make a debut. When I think Lalo, I'm sure like many listeners, I think Symphonie Espagnole, but so much more than that. But nonetheless, as you mentioned, his Spanish heritage quite apparent in this work too, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
got a nice firiness to it.
Definitely.
I'm curious, what's your take? How does it compare to some of the other romantic cello concerti, like the Elgar or the Dvorak, for instance?
It's a great question. It's similar in a lot of aspects. I mean, it's similar in length and technical demands. It's similar in, I think, the musical depth. The second movement of the concerto, the slow movement, it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's similar in that it's just unapologetically, that's way too early for a word like that, but it's unapologetically romantic. I mean, it's just there, and it's just amazing. But it is different. I mean, all the concertos are different, of course, but I mean, it has much more Spanish influence, let's say, than Dvorak or Elgar. Elgar is so British, and you feel the profound emotion, but in a very British way. play, and that's really special, and Dvorak is just a cornerstone of the repertoire. So Lalo is played much less often than those concertos, so that's why also I'm thrilled to have the chance to play it here in Winnipeg for the first time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it should be a great show, and we are thrilled that you'll be sharing it with us. I guess the last thing I want to ask you, Stéphane, I know this is a broad question, and I know after this performance you head back to Quebec for more performances with Marie-Ève Scarfone, who we just heard you playing with in the Brahms, and Valérie Milot, the harpist. But I'm curious, more broadly, what's next for you as an artist?
There are a lot of projects coming up, as you say. Quite a few concerts in November and December. I don't really have any time off till Christmas, which is okay because they're great projects and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm playing with the Thunder Bay Symphony in November. More concerts in December, namely one I'm looking forward to with Mireille Lagacé, the legendary organist and harpsichord player. We're doing a program that we've done a few times, which are the Bach Viola da Gamba sonatas. So we're doing that in Montreal. There are upcoming projects also in the new year. I'm artist in residence at the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra, so we have quite a few concerts in January and May coming up. I'm also artist in residence in Halifax at Cecilia Concerts, so we have quite a few projects coming up as well, and more recording projects that I can't tell you about just yet, but they're upcoming, so that'll be fun. But yeah, not much time off, but as I say, it's so inspiring to work with so many great artists that who needs time off, right?
Yeah, what a great way to be. Stéphane, thanks so much for taking the time to come by Classic 107 this morning. It's been a real pleasure having you here into the studio and looking forward to playing some of those perhaps new recordings that might be in the works. Yeah. So excited to share more of those with our listeners. Thanks for spending some time here.
Thank you. Thanks, Song.
Stéphane Tetreault performs with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra this weekend, tomorrow, November 1st, and again on Saturday. Both concerts, 8 p.m. at the Centennial Concert Hall. For more information, visit wso.ca.